Hey everybody, welcome back to another part of this VW restoration series. In this part, we'll be testing out the 12-volt electrical system. Now this video is going to be for three different audiences here. The first one will be the people that are just following the restoration to see the progress, and as you can see, there will be some progress shots of me of the dashboard and the, installing the lighting and the various components for us to test out here. The second audience would be just people that are coming in. Maybe they have a question, they're a bus owner, and they have a question about wiring. I won't be really going in depth about the 12-volt wiring, the instrumentation wiring, and all that stuff in the dashboard. But what I will do is kind of show you shots of various places in the engine compartment and things like that. And that might help people that are looking for good pictures or shots of wiring and some explanation of some of the stock 12-volt wiring. And then the third audience will be the people that are following this for the EV stuff. Now, I have my EV conversion on videos on a separate playlist, and right now there's only 2 of them because we're in the infancy. Now that we've got the car painted, we should be able to move forward with some of the electric vehicle modifications. So what we'll be talking about there is how the 12-volt wiring is different in an EV conversion versus a regular, gas engine car. So to start it off, I'll just kind of give an update on the progress here. You can see that I've got the dashboard installed. It is the original dashboard that came with it. I made some few minor repairs to some of the cracks in it, but I'm just going to use it. I don't need it perfect, and it looks pretty good after being cleaned up. I still got to install the glove box, and I do have that, as well as I have a blank out plate for the radio, but for now I'm keeping those open so I can access that just in case I need to do anything. Now this dashboard is all stock. There was no modifications. The only modified wiring was all torn out, and that's just radio and CB wiring, which, as you guys know, these cars are notorious for the most hacky radio and speaker wiring. So once that was all torn out, it's really a clean stock wiring harness, thankfully. Not too many missing wires or all that different color wires or hacked in connections and all that. Luckily I got lucky and that the stock wiring was pretty well intact. I've also started installing other various things like those outer seat bay covers and the seat belts, although that I probably have to replace that. I think that's a bug retractable seat belt. It's too small. But I've got, I think, everything wired in, including the instrument cluster. I will have to take that out for some EV modifications, but we'll talk about that later. But for now, everything is stock and everything is put back together, including I think I had to replace the hazard switch, but I got the original headlight switch, the original, the rear defroster switch. And the only modifications I actually made was this thing that is just just one of those charging port things, those little USB charging ports, and that's just replaces the cigarette lighter thing, which is useless. So that's about the only modification. Other than that, all the wiring in there is pretty bone stock. On the front, in addition to just cleaning up and painting and getting the dashboard kind of refurbished and the windshield wiper stuff put on, I also started putting on these things, and this was another interesting foray for me into stock versus aftermarket hardware for the car. And this was actually, I think what came with this project car was 2 different bulb holders and lenses, all in various stages of, I think one was a mid-70s, one may have been from this car, I don't really know. But I was able to get the right-hand one with a new seal put on it, an aftermarket seal put on it, and this installed. I've also got the cages for the headlights put in, and I will be putting in a couple. I just happen to have these, so I'll just be throwing those in just for testing. I will be doing another video on installing and reviewing new LED 7-inch round headlights, and that's coming soon. I had 2 versions of the left-hand plate. Neither one of them were viable. They were both had plastic issues, broken things. or one of them had paint and all inside this thing, and I couldn't get it off. So I had to get an aftermarket one. The aftermarket one comes with a new seal, but it was the cheesiest thing I've ever seen, like a lot of aftermarket parts. One, the bulb holder was a single bulb, single filament bulb, meaning there was nothing for the running lights. So all it was a blinker circuit. So the only modification I made to this was I actually filed away the area behind here, put a double filament bulb holder, the backing piece, into that I pulled off of the old unit. And then I was able to modify the little leg, because one of the legs has to be shorter on a double filament bulb. So I filed that down, and I was able to get a double bulb in here. Now, whether that works or not, I haven't tested it yet. That's what we'll find out. So this won't have the alternate bulb that this one has. So likely what I'll do is once I see the difference in them and how they match up, I'll probably pull this bulb out and just run, the daytime running light just off that so that they kind of match up. But this is a cheesy unit. You can see how flimsy and cheap it is, but hopefully it'll be all right. Now the inside of the car, there is some wiring, and what I've done here is that wiring there will go to a small interior light, and I've got just the positive taped off, so I don't have a light fixture in there just yet, but what I'll do is put my meter on it just to see if I get 12 volts when I turn the lights on, or open the door, I guess. Same thing there. Fixed up that wiring, and I put an insulated push-on connector onto the positive side, so that's just going to stay there, and I'll just test it to see if it's giving me the 12 volts that it should. One thing to take note of, I'm going to get it inside here. I'm on the passenger side. This thing, I don't know if this is a common problem, but this is the big thick positive for the defroster, the rear defroster. So it's a pretty thick cable, and you can see here's the original, and this was all chewed up and frayed over in here, and I don't know if that's a common problem, but that would have been a big time zappy zap blow fuse, because this would have grounded out. I ended up having to replace about 2 feet of this cabling going back there, just grafting in a new piece. So hopefully that is okay. I don't know how it looks between here and the back, but I've at least addressed what I can see. Going to the back, and this is where probably other bus owners might find this helpful, because again, this wiring harness back here was all bone stock, and I ended up having to replace these rear taillights. The ones that I had from this project car were just all chewed up and just couldn't be reused. These are the stock ones, and I'll film the label on it, I think, if I can see behind there. They're not German originals, but they're the aftermarket ones that are the highest quality aftermarket ones. So they're reasonably good. But here we have the turn signal, and then we have the combo tail light, brake light, double bulb, and then we have the single bulb here, which is just your reverse light. So we'll be testing out all that on both sides. Then I don't have the gasket on this yet. I'm going to make a gasket for this, but this is the license plate light bulb. And then we've got another replacement tail light here. And so really that's what we're going to be testing out today. All right, I'm holding lights up and I'm crouched inside my engine compartment. Not easy to do to a guy in their middle ages here, so excuse me if I huff and puff when I'm crouching in here. Well, what I think I have all the stock wiring kind of ironed out once I put it back. Again, this has been disconnected, and I've never owned the car with the wiring on it, so I kind of had to re-engineer and figure out how this worked. But this is what I came up with. Hopefully it's right. But anyway, this main wiring harness comes out of this grommet. I made myself a couple new battery cables here. They're way overkill. I think they're 2-gauge wiring, which is so much bigger than what I need. But I happen to have the cabling and the ends, so I just went ahead and made these. So these are my battery terminals here. And I think the positive battery cable actually went into this hole here, and it went down because the starter would have been down around here. And as such, also, this little harness here, which end up having a couple, sorry, it's hard to see, but a couple thick cables attached to it with some rings. One of those, let's see if I can, one of those I have attached to this terminal block here. So let me take this off here. Because so what I'm going to do, and this goes into the EV wiring part of it, is I'm going to use these terminal blocks, or these distribution blocks in the back here, because what I don't have is a starter solenoid like the Volkswagen, you know, the original Volkswagen had, which would tie these high current kind of items together. So right now, this harness is coming up through that grommet, which I believe was just for like a fuel sender wire or some kind of wiring. I'm not sure what was going into that, but what I did was I pulled this wiring harness up through that grommet. Normally that wiring harness would sit up in here, and the way it would work is your starter solenoid and starter assembly would be in here on the transmission, and you would have these three red wires. This one is the main B positive, and I think that is red with white stripe, and it's a thick 6 mil wire, which is what 10 gauge, I guess. And then you'd have this wire, which is red with black stripe. That's your ignition. And I don't know if this is a thick wire, so I don't know if this is ignition switch or if it feeds the positive back through from the ignition switch and it's a ignition positive. So I'll have to figure that out, because ultimately I do need an ignition switch wire for the EV stuff, but I don't necessarily need an ignition positive. I just need an ignition switch signal wire, but I could probably figure out how to make that work for this. Then there's just a normal red wire, and what I tracked that down to is this was just hooked onto the solenoid D-ring, which just got fed this positive, maybe off the ignition, I'm not quite sure, but that just goes down to this harness, which I think came out of here or somewhere, I'm not sure, but this just has a few wires on here. I cut some of it off, but I'm keeping most of the wiring stock. But this was the other end of that red wire, which I think was the B positive to the fan motor. There was like a electric fan motor for your heating ducts to push the hot air through. Then there's a ground wire, then there's this black one that I think went to some kind of ignition thing, and then I think this blue and black wire was an oil pressure. But I don't have this harness entirely figured out yet, but I do have it kind of isolated and off to the side here, as well as this other blue wire, which I'm not sure was a fuel sender wire or what, but it's close enough to the gas tank. I don't know. So I have to figure these out and see whether I need to use them. What I'm going to do is tie my main battery cable to it. As you can see, that's just going to go through here. I'll probably clean it up with some grommets and some holders or whatnot. And that's going to this block. And right now I just have it going to the B positive wire that's going up to the front fuse block. And that's it. And I'll just leave my ignition switch and everything else done. So this should power everything that we're going to test. Now later on, nice thing about these distribution blocks is you can attach two other high current devices. Well, you can even you have plenty of room to attach more even onto these terminals. So you can attach high current devices onto it, or you can attach a series, if you see these holes, a series of stainless steel screws for some smaller little wires with some rings on them. And then you just kind of clean it up with this top casing here. And then the wires can be organized out the side. Now, what I plan on doing is having a terminal block for the battery positive, another terminal distribution block for the negatives, which I'll probably run like a thicker, like a 8-gauge wire off of the ground, and have a ground for the 12-volt system. Again, for the EV stuff, 12-volt system with chassis ground is completely isolated from the high voltage stuff that runs the electric vehicle. But also what I'm going to use here, because the EV is going to require a lot of different things back here, relays and things that I want to run, plus an electric vacuum pump and vacuum reservoir for the braking system. I got a 6 fuse remote fuse block here. So what I'll do is tie this to the fuse block here, and I'll have 6 fusible links for this to run other things off of it. Or again, if I have like an inline fusible link for some other thing, I can just run it straight off the distribution block. So that's kind of how it's going to act right now. And so right now I'm just going to kind of set this here, and this will just help me tie my battery to my fuse block for us to test our low voltage wiring. This is how I ran my cabling. I think this is how you're supposed to do it, where you run this off here, and then we go to our side things. I believe this black wire may go to a side marker. Notice I did not drill and install side markers for the rear. I'm not going to do that. And I believe side markers usually would probably tap off your taillight wiring in here and come out and then go to the side marker. But this is all stock wiring here. We've got the red and black. We've got gray and red stripe. And then we've got, I know the top one is, we've got a brown ground. Green and black stripe was definitely the blinker circuit for the passenger side, for the right side. And then I think black, just straight black, is the reverse light. So that's the black wire in the bottom one here. And so you have the same kind of colors on the other side. The only thing I had to do to modify with these new ones is I ran them from the top. I think I don't know if you're supposed to run from the top or bottom, but this makes the most sense for me. And then I had to extend this, which I think I'll find out what black and red is, but I had to extend that on both sides because it just wouldn't come, I think on the stock one, it comes off the top, and on these aftermarket ones, it's down at the bottom with this one. So yeah, that's the only change here is on the taillight, is on this taillight circuit. I make a little extension whip on both sides. But yeah, let me just get that shot again for VW owners who maybe can't figure out the wiring. That's the way it looks. Okay, now that you have a lay of the land of the wiring, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that battery in the back. I'm gonna go ahead and throw these headlights in, and let's test it out. Okay, so I've got a couple headlights installed here, just sitting in there and wired up. And in the back, I've got my battery installed as well. And I have not, I've put the negative terminal on. I have not done the positive terminal yet. All right, guys, I'm a little nervous. I'm gonna test the positive. I'm putting voltage through this for the very first time in I don't know how many years. Let's just tap it and see if there's any sparks. Oh, it's a good sign. Hear a relay click, no sparks though. Let's go ahead and throw this on there. All right, first test. Headlights. The first position. We do have that filament. We do have that filament. Either that's not working or that bulb I was incorrect, and that is tied to the blinker to enhance the blinking on this side, but that's probably what it is. Okay, cool. So we got that. Let's go to our rear and see if we got, I can't remember if the rear, oh yeah, we got our license plate light and we have both of our filaments for the tail light. All right, let's go pull all the way out. Our headlight is on the second position. Okay, we don't have a headlight there. I should have known. All right. Well, either these bulbs are bad, which is I'm hoping it is the case, or I've got a big problem. Let's do hazards. That should do our blinking circuits. It's fast. Okay, yeah, we got that. We got that. Oh man. All right, we're doing good. Okay, the rear's a problem. No, we got one, so we need to look at this. I'm hoping it's just the bulb there, so we'll look at that one. So the right passenger blinking bulb is not working. Yeah, let's turn on the ignition and see what. Is it on already? No. Okay, the ignition's on. I don't hear a relay click or anything. Ooh. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to spray some electrical parts cleaner in that, but it seems like it's working. We got our blinking indicator light. It is blinking quite erratically, but okay, that's our left side. I think that's both working fully on the left. Now we'll go right, and I'm expecting it. We got our front. I'm expecting that rear one to be bad. Well, that's interesting. So the hazard, the hazard's not working that, but yet this thing is. Okay. There's always going to be some weirdness. That's weird that our hazard, maybe there's a missing wire on that hazard. It's really weird. So that bulb is fine. Nope, and it came back on now. Well, that's an old car for you, right? I can't, well, maybe I can test let me just, whoa, did I just, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Now the lights are working. Just needs to be exercised, I guess. So it looks like I'm gonna be putting a lot of contact cleaner into different places. So that's good. Okay, let's test the brights. Yeah. Okay, we're back to, this is awesome. We're back to 100% now. Yeah. Okay, maybe either I didn't pull on this hard enough or the first time, or I don't know what. So, okay, interesting. Everything's working now. Okay, one casualty, we have the 0 wiper. I don't hear the wiper motor even engaging at all. That's a problem. All right, I'll have to look into that. Maybe that's a bad wiper motor. All right, let's test out the dome light here. Zero volts. Yes, I do have the switches installed. Nice. 10.8. That's what that's not low because of a short. That's the battery. That's as far as I could charge that crappy battery. So that's working. Nice. How about our cabin light? See if this works. Nice. Wonder if my little USB port works. Oh, very cool. Just as an addendum to the wiper motor issue, I disconnected that plug and filmed, or I was able to verify on that plug that between ground and the 2 contacts that do low and high, at least, when I did it from the stock, that I got the proper voltage on, off, and then low to high. On each of those terminals, I got the proper voltage. So that means the wiring and the stock is fine. And so then I thought, well, maybe the problem was that I have that weak battery, you know, and it was only putting out like 10.5 volts. So I threw the battery charger on it in the back, and you can see my little fancy little thing now. Now you can see it was getting, you know, when I initially did it, it was getting 12 to 13 volts now, and still tried it, still doesn't work. So my conclusion is the wiper motor is bad. I end up finding in the stash of parts I got from this project car a whole nother wiper assembly, and on it it said 77 bus was painted on the motor. So I took the motor off my what I believe is happening is this is the original windshield wiper assembly. That's the original motor. The motor died, and probably the previous owner bought that to replace it, and just never did. Well, I'm coming in totally blind. I don't know what's what. So I went ahead and cleaned up the motor a little bit on that other assembly, plugged it in, and it is working. So I had to take out a lot of the dash to get that assembly out, so that sucked. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt that motor back into the original assembly and put it all back together, so we should be good to go. Well, more drama with the wiper motor because, of course, why would it just swap out easily? What I noticed when I was installing I put the wiper motor onto the onto the original assembly, the frame here, and I noticed that it didn't have this mounting point here, this piece right here. And I also noticed, of course, that mounting point was actually built into the backing of the gear assembly here. So it's like, and if I try to it looks like it's exactly the same, right? And it is, but if I tried to take it all off, I'd have to unsolder wires and do the plug. And of course the plug was also mounted differently. It was mounted a little bit lower. So other than that, I think everything's fine. So what I did was I took this plate off, I cut the wires off of the old motor, the bad one, took this plate off and chopped it in half with my grinder, just cut it in half. And since the screw pattern's the same, I just took these screws out and screwed it over the old one. So it's just an added piece onto those screwed pieces. So anyway, that's and I don't know why they didn't have it on the previous, but maybe the previous version, this is just a design improvement because it keeps the motor a little more stable if it's mounted to the body. I don't know. Yeah, I wanted to keep that, so that's what I did. Now I'm going to go ahead and install it. Hopefully that's the end of the install nightmare. Well, after getting stuff tested, I put in some of those ABS panels down there to make everything pretty and started cleaning up some wiring. But that wiper motor, there's always that one mini project that you didn't expect that's going to take, it's going to eat an hour or more up. And that was it for me today, trying to get that wiper motor in. I also noticed, if you look at, you might be able to see the print on it, it says 77, I thought that said bus, but that might say bug. So maybe that explains why the motor is a little bit different, and I had to add that bracket. Maybe it was from a bug, but it looks about the same kind of motor. I think it says 77 bug on that. Anyway, now, there's low, there's high. We are good to go. The other thing that happened as I was working on that and cleaning grounds and cleaning up wiring and various other things.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
As I found the most annoying sound in the world. The door open thing. Or the key in the ignition and the door open. Oh my gosh, that's a horrible, annoying sound. Well, I put the steering wheel back on so I could test the horn button. That's kind of the last thing I wanted to test. And of course, like the windshield wiper motor, we have a problem. So it just wasn't working when I pushed it. And I spent a half hour just chasing all the wires, testing continuity. We have full continuity between the fuse block and the hot wire to the positive wire to the horn. And we have a good ground on this button here. I did that in my part 2 video, actually. I made sure I did that and had the ground strap going down around the new coupler and all that. The only problem after all that chasing is this. There is a copper flap. You can see it in there. And that has to ride on the piece of copper on the bottom of the steering wheel. And that's what connects when you connect this wire to the ground via pushing down on the horn button. This wire connects to that little sprung copper plate, but that has to ride on the steering wheel. Notice that the gap I have is probably about 1/4 of an inch. It should be about half that. It should be a little bit of a gap, but not much. So the problem is that plate is not making contact with the steering wheel, and that's the only reason that that negative wire is not making the continuity. When I push it down, I think I've got the gap to where it rides on it properly, but that's the problem. Now, initially I thought, well, it may be that the steering column has slid, because that's a common problem. So I used my extractor bit and I pulled that bolt out of there, but I don't think that helped me. So I'm just going to put replace this with a cap head, cap head hex bolt of the same thread, and because it isn't something, it's something you need to pull out with an extractor bit. Then that led me to, so how do I get it to where I can just do this with one hand, because I've got the camera in the other hand, I'm able to push this down? Well, it's because I have it disconnected from here. And what I did was I took the rubber coupler out. I actually replaced this, and boy, have I become quite knowledgeable on Volkswagens in the last 2 years as necessary, because this part I bought, oops, sorry for the camera work here. This part I bought last year, and notice it says premium quality. So I thought, well, it's premium quality. I mean, come on. But now that I'm educated myself on aftermarket parts, this may have been actually 2 years ago when I first got the car, when I was, I think it was video number 2, where I was fixing the horn wiring, installing this and reinstalling the steering assembly, is when I put this part in. And my friend said, oh, you didn't get the Euramax part, and I don't know if there's any other markings on it. But I'm like, no, I don't know where I bought this from. I didn't buy it from Bus Depot. I ended up getting this on eBay, and I don't know, I paid like $15 for it. But then I read on the Samba that, yeah, if you can fold, and I'm going to do this with one hand, if you can fold this rubber with one hand pretty easily, it's probably the same garbage that many people over and over have said, you know, will tear out within, 1,500 miles or something. My buddy Brian actually said he got one like this, and it only went 5 days, I think, and then it just basically, when you're steering, it'll start warping because the rubber is so soft and it's not reinforced. So I'm going to replace this with a German one. Again, I think I paid $15 for this. So now that I'm educated, I'm going to buy the proper part. Well, I'm going to cut this video here and call it a success. I think we got pretty much all of our 12-volt wiring, minus the brake switch and reverse lights, which I'll do later when I get hydraulics in the brake master cylinder and when I get the transmission and that kind of stuff put together. But I'm confident that I think we have all the major wiring issues resolved. We fixed the windshield wiper motor and got that working. I at least know the electrical, the part of the horn is not electrical anymore. So I'm gonna, once I fix that coupler, I've got that all taken care of. And I think we're in pretty good shape to say that the 12-volt wiring on this car is good and we can move forward with other projects. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.